Okay. And then in 1995, the trial of O.J. Simpson. How did you get involved in this case?
I was in Israel with my son at some event, and I had been on television before I went to Israel, the day after the killing. And I said, of course he's guilty. I mean, it's always the husband, and he has a history of abuse. So I think he'll probably plead guilty and come up with some excuse to minimize the sentence. Well, he didn't do that. But when I was in Israel, I got a call from Bob Shapiro saying, we need you to become our, appellate advisor in the case. And I said, I can't do it. I've already said he's guilty. And Bob said, well, everybody thinks he's guilty. But we need you to save him from the death penalty because they're seeking the death penalty. So I agreed to take the case.
Okay. And how involved were you in this case?
I was pretty involved. I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't at the trial except maybe a dozen days. I was watching it on closed circuit television with my legal team in my office in Cambridge, and we were turning out briefs and sending them by fax as the case was ongoing. I was the God forbid lawyer, the lawyer that he would have to use, God forbid, if he were convicted. But he wasn't convicted, and so I never had to argue the appeal.
Okay, so did you deal with him directly at all, or just through
of course. No, I was with him. I was with him when the glove was tried on. I was with him before the glove was tried on. Right after there was a break, I was with him again. We talked about whether they wanted to try on the glove again without the latex underglove. So, yeah, no, I got to know him pretty well.
Well, you said that we didn't win the case. They lost it. They blew it. They made the worst possible mistakes. And you talked about the whole glove situation because I guess they could have had him try on the glove in a private room without the jury, right?
That's right. And they didn't do it. They were so arrogant and self-confident. They didn't do it. They made every possible mistake in the book. I wrote a book about it called Reasonable Doubts, which I used to give out to my students and say, if you want to be a criminal lawyer, read this book and don't do what the prosecutors did in this case. They made every mistake in the book, starting from where the trial was held, downtown Los Angeles, which would have a very positive jury pool for us, instead of in Brentwood, which would have had a less good jury pool. How the jury was selected, everything was wrong. Marcia Clark and Darden were the worst possible prosecutors to try this case, and it showed. So we didn't win, they lost.
Well, yeah, you said that they made fools of themselves in front of the jury. They put on police officers they could prove that were lying. We caught them tampering with evidence, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of your dealings with OJ, any interesting stories around what happened, out of the cameras?
No, I never saw him except in prison. Remember, by the time I got in the case, bail had been denied and he was in prison. So I went to visit him in jail. And so there aren't too many interesting stories, except, he maintained himself in really good shape while he was on trial. He was a funny guy. And he took control of the defense. He knew what he wanted. And he instructed Johnny Cochran and Bob Shapiro and F. Lee Bailey. The decisions were largely his, except the decision to testify. He wanted to testify. And all of us except Lee Bailey told him not to.
Well, I remember the documentary about the case. They were saying that he was on some sort of medication. And if he didn't take it, his hands would somewhat swell. And they were saying that was the reason why the glove didn't fit. I mean, from your point of view, do you think that was actually his glove, or was it planted, or
I have
what
no idea. I have no idea. The point is not what I believe. The point is what the jury believed. And the jury believed that evidence had been tampered with, and that was a reasonable belief. And the judge correctly instructed that you had to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And remember, the jury consisted of 9 African Americans, but 3 non-African Americans, including a white woman who had previously turned the jury around that had preliminarily voted for conviction, for acquittal, and she made them vote for conviction. We called her the demon because we were afraid that she would always vote for conviction, but she didn't. She then regretted it afterward and said she wished she had voted for conviction, but she didn't.
I mean, were you surprised when you heard the non-guilty verdict?
I did. I was surprised. I thought there might be a hung jury. I didn't think there'd be an acquittal.
Okay. Based on what you know, do you think he was guilty or not guilty?
I can't tell you that. I can tell you that Benjamin Netanyahu once asked me that question. And I said, Mr. Prime Minister, does Israel have nuclear weapons? And he said, Alan, I can't tell you that. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, I can't tell you that. We both have secrets.